everybody, and thank you for joining me for today's video. A lot to talk about. If you're new here, my name is Gerald. I am a student meteorologist here at the University of North Carolina, Charlotte, and I'm going to run you through a lot of things today involving the weather here in the eastern half of the country. So if you like the video, go ahead and hit that like button, and if you haven't already subscribed, please go ahead and do so. We're kind of going through some tremendous growth right now on this channel, so I don't want you to miss out, and make sure you hit that bell so you're always up to date with the latest events here in the world of weather. So let me go ahead and run everybody through the game plan for today's video before we jump into it. We're going to start off by talking about what to expect for the rest of this week going into this weekend, including a little bit of snow that we can expect into New England and maybe even the Mid-Atlantic towards the end of this weekend going into the start of next week. And then after that, we're going to spend a lot of time talking about this potential for a winter storm here in the eastern United States at about a week out. So we're still in that 7 to 10 day period, but we're going to look at the ingredients we have and see if just maybe we can get all of that to match up and potentially give us some snow here into the East Coast. All right, so we'll start off by looking at satellite, and I'll run you through what we've seen so far today. Again, still have this low pressure spinning up here into the Midwest that is finally working its way out of the Midwest and will eventually cross through the Northeast going into tonight, which could help cause a little bit of snow in sections of New England. Other than that, pretty pleasant weather here across the East Coast today. Some showers and storms left over in Florida from that front that moved through yesterday across most of the East. But pretty pleasant day. It's been really nice here in Charlotte, where I am currently at. We've had highs in the 50s and 60s, and it's been super sunny, which is awesome. So looking at our hazards, map is a lot more blank than it has been as of late here across the East. We do have those winter weather advisories up into New England for what could be, some wintry conditions going into tonight and tomorrow, with potentially some accumulating snowfall. And then again, here across the south and southeast, you see a lot of these little green areas. Those are flood warnings just from some of those creeks and streams still being high from all that rain we've received over the past week. But luckily, a lot quieter map than we've had to deal with as of late. So we'll go ahead and run you through the rest of this week here on Futurecast. Then we'll take a dive into the Northeast and take a more in-depth look at some of that snow that could fall there over the next 48 hours or so. So currently, again, got some snow falling here in the Midwest, nothing crazy, just kind of the leftover remnants of that low up there. And then other than that, we're pretty dry here across the east, some leftover drizzle in areas and even some showers into Florida, but nothing to get too worried about. As we go into tonight, though, as you can see, we start to get some more snow here into the Northeast, and maybe even some northwest flow here into the higher terrain of West Virginia, Pennsylvania, but I wouldn't expect anything too crazy out of that. Maybe a dusting to an inch in some of those places that get a little more lucky with that northwest flow. But the main story here is going to be that precipitation building back into New England. And with that, as we get into tomorrow morning and afternoon, get a nice little swath of snow to set up here, potentially moving through the Boston area, New Hampshire, Vermont, Bangor, Maine, potentially seeing some snow with this. And we'll go ahead and get into those totals here into a second. But as we go into the weekend, this is Saturday morning, we begin to slowly clear out before our next system arrives. So that's the GFS. I'll go ahead and show you the same thing on the Euro real quick before we take that in-depth look with that snow that will fall in New England tomorrow. Sorry about that. So again, Euro agrees here with the GFS. That system will begin to start working its way through New England going into tomorrow and tomorrow afternoon, with some snow beginning to build into areas here. And we'll go ahead and take an in-depth look at that now before getting into later this weekend. So as we go into the overnight here, this is about midnight here. Could get a batch of precipitation here moving through northern New Jersey, potentially New York City, places like Scranton, PA, and we also have some of that lake effect showers coming in to some of these places into Ohio and Erie as well. But once we get into tomorrow morning, once that band of precipitation kind of works from this area upwards into Massachusetts, Boston, and some of those other places, it will likely turn to snow as we have temperatures that are supportive of that. So Again, going into tomorrow morning and afternoon, pretty nice swath of snow here into New England, from potentially as far south as Connecticut, up through New Hampshire and into Maine. And with that, we do still have some of this northwest flow coming in off the Great Lakes here, so don't be too surprised to see some snow showers in a place like Pittsburgh, Cleveland, and again, even down potentially as far south and east as the mountains of West Virginia. But that snow will continue into the afternoon tomorrow into New England before eventually pulling away going into tomorrow night, and just some leftover lake effect bands moving through some of the suspect areas that normally see that. So looking at snowfall totals here, this is the blend of models, so these are all the models thrown together giving us these totals. Nothing crazy, but I wouldn't be too surprised to see 1 to 3 inches in this general area. I think the models are underdoing it just a little bit here, so I think 1 to 3 inches is a pretty safe bet here. Again, could see an inch or two here into the mountains of West Virginia, and then a couple inches here on those places that can get under those lake effect bands and have them kind of sit over the same area for a little bit of time. All right, so now let's go ahead and talk about this next system, that will move through going into this weekend. I don't expect too much out of this, but we could see some snow into the mid-Atlantic as well as rain into the southeast. So go ahead and move this ahead in time. We'll look at the GFS first here. This is going into Sunday morning here on the GFS. Again, getting some rain here throughout the southeast, and maybe just a little bit of snow trying to work its way into these areas of the Midwest and northern Mid-Atlantic here on the GFS. We'll go ahead and bring this into Sunday afternoon here in the GFS. And the GFS is a bit more bullish than the other models, but, bringing a pretty good thumping of snow here into the Mid-Atlantic from DC through Baltimore up towards Philly. So maybe during the Eagles game on Sunday, seeing some snow fly. We'll see once we get to the shorter range models if those trends continue. But the GFS has been a bit more bullish than other models. While that's ongoing, though, I do definitely expect some showers here across the southeast going into your Sunday, so for your church commute on Sunday. And then as we go into early next week, that system will begin to work its way out and will clear up going into Monday. The Euro's been a bit slower with the progression of the system. Looking at Sunday afternoon on the Euro here, you see this is still a lot further back to the west, and we don't really have any snow here Sunday on the Euro model here through the Mid-Atlantic. Euro confining some of that wintry precipitation here to the mountains of Virginia and North Carolina, potentially seeing some sleet changing over to rain on Sunday on the Euro here, before eventually the system gets some light snow, maybe some flurries or sleet into a place like Philly going into Sunday night and Monday. But one thing the models do agree on is a pretty showery setup here across the southeast going into the later half of this weekend. So I feel pretty confident in that. As for the snow potential here into the Mid-Atlantic, once we get into tomorrow and Saturday, it'll be a lot easier to nail down exactly who is going to see that snow and how much. Again, the Euro, though, does clear out the area going into Monday and Tuesday of next week. All right, so now let's go ahead and talk about this long-range chance of wintry precipitation trying to work its way back into the east here. And model trends today have been kind of all over the place, but that's something you would expect whenever you're still in that 7 to 10 day window. Right now we're sitting about 7, 8, 9 days out, so we're slowly working our way to getting closer. But whenever you're at this 7 to 10 day window, what you really got to do is just take a deep breath. Don't look at every deterministic model run's precipitation output, and just kind of look at the ingredients and see if the ingredients are there for some kind of storm. So that's exactly what we're going to do here today. I'm not going to show you some kind of crazy snowfall map at 10 days out just to have somebody in the comments attack me for it. So we're going to be very sensible about this, but I'm also going to inform you without keeping the information from you. So let's go ahead and get right into it here. We'll start by looking at the GFS deterministic model run. So what that means is this is just one run. This is not the ensembles, which we will take a look at, but this is just one run of the GFS and what it thinks will occur with this next storm. All right, so we'll go ahead and move this ahead in time here. As you see here on the GFS, this is going into this Sunday, so this is still short term. This is that storm we will be dealing with. Just to give you an idea, the blue generally means stormier weather. So we're going to watch for those areas of blue here on the map. As we get into the start of next week, we begin to clear out here across the east. As you can see, these heights rise in the red, meaning clearer weather, less storminess. But as we get into the middle of next week, the GFS here brings one storm in. And this is going into next Tuesday and Wednesday. This storm likely will not be able to produce much of any wintry precipitation in the east, just because we don't have any cold air really to work with this storm. Normally what you would want is this blue to be nice and lined up here, which we have, although we don't really have enough of the red here. For a setup of snow in the east, you really want to see high pressure, or this red, kind of up here, and then the low pressure, or the blue, down here, and taking a track like that. It's generally what you want to see a East Coast snowstorm, and more specifically, a southeastern snowstorm. So not quite possible with the system in the middle of next week, although it will bring some rain back here into the southeast. You see the GFS deepens that off the coast. But what you see on the GFS here is we then funnel in some colder air here in the red, which is going to help bring not necessarily cold temperatures, but more average for January, which is really all you need this time of year to get a storm. But then as we go into later next week, going into next Thursday and Friday here, the GFS gets a storm here. It's a bit far north for what you would want to see snow. But GFS then takes that storm and begins going into next weekend, really deepens it and dives it here into the southeast. So this is a pretty good look, because you have this low pressure here in the southeast with that counterclockwise flow, and then you have high pressure here up in the north supplying cold air. So I know we've looked at the GFS, and a lot of people have said it's over, no snow in the east, 12Z GFS, awful. Although this really isn't that bad of a look to be dealing with at this kind of range. So the ingredients are there here on the GFS. And then the GFS brings that up the coast here. And, again, those ingredients kind of move up towards New England, going really far out. All right, so now let's go ahead and look at the Euro and see what the Euro is showing. Now, just to have a disclaimer, I didn't show the CMC, which is the Canadian model, but the CMC showed a pretty similar picture to what the GFS showed. If we look at the Euro now, again, this is going into this weekend here. This is that little system I've been talking about. We'll look out for, see what exactly happens with it. But then we'll go ahead and move this into early next week. That moves out. The reds move in, start to clear things out. But once we get towards the middle of next week, the Euro agrees. We bring some stormy weather back here into the east, and more specifically the southeast. And then what the Euro does, much like the GFS, I'm sorry, I did not mean to bring it that far ahead. Sorry, map is messing up a little bit here, but we'll go ahead and move ahead. Sorry about that. But as we go into later next week, Euro here gets a storm developing here into the southern plains and gets this nice high pressure diving south. Go ahead and move this ahead even more. Euro really deepens this thing, and this is really good placement here on the Euro. Gets that low pressure moving through the southeast and has this high pressure in the north helping to funnel cold air in. So the ingredients are also here for this on the Euro. So again, this is what we look at this time frame, or are the ingredients there? And on the deterministic model runs, the ingredients are there. All right, so now looking at some of the ensembles, we'll start with the GFS, and we'll go ahead and look at that. Again, going into this weekend, GFS here shows low pressure moving through, so causing some of those stormier conditions, and we'll again look at that chance of mid-Atlantic winter weather. That then works its way out, clear out going into early next week, and then the GFS here going into the middle of next week, again tries to get some low pressure here to move through the southeast, much like the deterministic model run. And then once we go into late next week here on the GFS ensembles, you see that low pressure up here into the Tennessee and Ohio River valleys. So if we were to get a track like this, which again, very possible, all options are still on the table whenever we're this far out, this would not be as great for snow in the east. But of course, we do have some spread here. On the GFS, the possibilities of low locations are pretty much anywhere in that circle. So that goes to show just how much uncertainty that we are dealing with at this time frame. So again, GFS ensembles here still show that storm system, and then does begin to deepen it off the coast here with cold high pressure in place on the ensembles, and that tries to work its way up the coast as we go into more of the day 10 time period. All right, let's look at the same thing with the Euro now and the Euro ensemble members. Again, we'll go ahead and move this ahead in time. Again, this is this weekend storm. Euro here moves that through the mid-Atlantic, and then we clear out going into the beginning of next week with the ensembles here before we get this system to move in towards the end of next week. And you notice the difference here between the GFS ensembles and the Euro ensembles. The GFS had them more clustered here. The Euro has it more clustered down here. So a better look on the Euro for snow in the east here, and especially the southeast. We'll move this ahead in time. And again, in terms of transparency, you do see a bit more clustering here on the Euro ensembles further to the north and west. So we'll see if that turns into a trend where maybe the Euro tries to kick this low back up towards that direction closer to a GFS solution. But still, not a bad look here. We still have plenty of members down here, but one thing they do agree with is that low pressure deepening off the coast here. Nearly all these ensemble members here are south and east of I-85 with that low pressure placement here at about, the 7 to 8 day period. And then the Euro ensembles also begin to deepen that and move it up the coast as well. So you're seeing an overall pattern where we have the ingredients for snow in the east. Now what we're going to do as we get closer is iron that out and see if we can get those ingredients to align even better. So I'll show you one more set of maps here in today's video. This will be something I also showed in yesterday's video, which is the chance of seeing an inch of snow within a 24-hour period. I like this map a lot just because I think it helps to break down the chances that are more realistic than not so realistic. So we'll start with the GFS here. Again, this is for this weekend system. Again, kind of the bullseye chance of snow going to be in that general area of the red circle. But as we move further ahead, going into late next week when we get that next system that we were talking about here, again, the GFS, although that deterministic model run that you've probably seen all over the internet and all over Twitter wasn't so favorable, the ensembles here still show that chance of snow here across the east, and especially here into the Appalachian mountain chain. I mean, you're seeing numbers here in West Virginia upwards or past 50% chance of seeing more than an inch of snow is super promising to see at this time frame. But even those chances working their way down into the Carolinas and Georgia, although not high, there's at least a signal there nonetheless. And you're even getting, above 10% as far south as a place like Charlotte. So, again, at this kind of time frame, you want to be careful, but the signal is there nonetheless. And then we'll go ahead and show you the EPS now, or the Euro ensembles. Again, this is that system going into this weekend. Pretty good agreement with the GFS there. And then those chances go down going into next week, into the beginning. But once we get to the end here, the Euro, really bullish here, and a lot more consolidated here on its ensemble members. I mean, you're getting this is a pretty good signal to be at this time frame. Obviously, things can change, and they will change, but to be this far out and see, pretty good agreement with the GFS ensembles here in terms of the mountains, but getting above 10% chance as far south as nearly Atlanta, down towards Columbia, and even upwards past 20 along and north of the I-85 corridor. It works well with climatology, and the signal is there. Also, the Euro has just been performing better recently this winter. It seems like the GFS is more often catching up to the Euro than the Euro catching up to the GFS. So we'll continue to watch those trends, but personally, I like the pattern. I think it's great. I even put this tweet on my Twitter all the way back on December 28th. And pretty much what I talked about in that was, even though we had that giant warm-up, watch the middle of January towards late January, because climatology says that's a great time for snow here in the east. And generally, that's kind of whenever you begin to break down these patterns, is after about 2 weeks. So that looks like it might be coming to fruition here, but of course we have plenty of time to check with that. But again, if you enjoyed the video, I'd love for you to hit that like button, share it with your friends and family so they're also up to date on this stuff, and make sure you hit that subscribe button because again, we're really doing special things here with this channel, and we're growing at a tremendous rate, which I could not be more thankful for. So thank you for joining me, and I will see you all tomorrow.